Hi, this is Heather Cole with Lodestar Solutions, and today we're going to talk about IBM Cognos licensing for BI and performance management, formerly known as TM1. IBM's made a number of changes effective fall of 2013, so we're going to incorporate those into our presentation today. At Lodestar, we believe that business analytics is about people, process, and tools in that order. We empower the people, and it's through programs like this that we're trying to educate you to be better and more effective at your jobs and to help promote business intelligence and business analytics in your company. So I need to do a little disclaimer here. The content in this webinar is based on what is currently available at the time of producing this video. It's always changing. IBM changes the rules very frequently. So please always check with either your partner like Lodestar Solutions or your IBM client rep. Individual contract terms may have been uniquely agreed upon, and therefore those will prevail. Our recommendations are those the views of Lodestar Solutions and not necessarily those of IBM. And this is not to be construed as legal advice, but is for informational purposes only. So we'll start by giving you a little bit about Lodestar Solutions. For those of you that this is your first webinar that you've attended, welcome. Lodestar is a premier reselling partner, which means that we can give you competitive quotes on licensing and support renewals, but we're much more than that. We really view ourselves as educators in business analytics. And what that means is, in addition to having a fully certified team of expert IBM Cognos resources that can help you with your BI implementation, your TM1, we can help with customized on-site training on how Advanced Workspace works, how TM1 Modeler works. We can help you in all areas of your Cognos, but we also host a number of webinars, user groups, and other events that are designed to teach you how to really be effective in implementing business analytics as a change agent. Many of these programs are software agnostic, so they're applicable no matter what licensing structure you have. We are a women-owned business, and we encourage you to check out our website, which is lodestarsolutions.com, and check out all our new videos, events. We're constantly updating it. We update our blog at least twice a week with great information, and we get those ideas from you, our viewers. We have a number of great educational offerings. One program is called the Psychology of Requirements Gathering for Change Agents. This is a really fun program in which we teach both finance, IT, marketing, whoever joins, kind of how the other areas of the organization are wired, how they think. We help break down the communication barriers. We teach you how people become change agents, how you build rapport so that you can effectively gather requirements. This program alone, when people were surveyed that attended it, it increased their ability to effectively gather requirements by more than 22%. And that was in our pilot program, was a half-day program. We've extended that based on feedback to a full-day program. So check that out. We have a program called Defining Strategic Initiatives for Change Agents. In this program, we help you define those strategic initiatives so that business analytics can reflect that. We have a program on agile project management, and this is designed to teach you how to have a much more flexible implementation structure. We do the one-on-one coaching with business executives so that we can teach them how to align their teams and set you up for success. We do requirements gathering, both a workshop as well as consulting. And of course, we have all sorts of training programs as well. So check out our programs on our website. Our website, again, is www.lodestarsolutions.com. Anytime that you see a picture of someone's face with a little our logo in the corner, that's a video. So check those out. There's some for advanced Cognos users and some that are software agnostic. A little bit about me. I am the president of Lodestar Solutions and a strategic coach. I've worked in the software industry for over 20 years, and why I'm uniquely qualified to give you this presentation is I just happen to be a lawyer. I don't do it for a living, but therefore I do understand the licensing structure. So if you have some unique questions, please always feel free to contact me directly. Our agenda today is, first off, we're going to talk about what's not in this webinar. Then we're going to go into the pre-IBM licensing. We're going to go into what is a special bid, an introduction to the new licensing model. We're going to talk about IBM legacy licensing, Cognos 10 functionality and licensing, what a trade-up is and when you should do it, steps for your licensing review. We'll also talk about the new licensing structure for both BI and TM1. And then I'm going to give you some of my Heather's helpful hints. So what's not included in this? If you are looking for licensing information on SPSS or Cognos Express, or migrating from Express to Enterprise, that is not in this particular webinar. We will be posting shortly some new webinars that will have that content information. So check out our website for those webinars. We had to shrink down the content today, so we're going to focus today on BI and TM1. So before IBM bought Cognos, there are some really creative salespeople out there, and they created some very creative licensing structures. Some of you are still on these licensing structures. If so, pull out those contracts, review them. Most of the time, you have been moved into the newer IBM licensing structure. And there's been some great improvements for that. But just remember, if you have addendums, which are kind of additional contracts that are tied to your main contract, check those out, pull them out. So what is a special bid? A special bid is a term that we use in the IBM circles when we need to get approval from IBM to give you the deal that we're trying to get you. So if you are looking to purchase some licensing that is no longer on the price sheet, then you would need to do a special bid. The IBM partner, like Lodestar, or your inside salesperson that you're working with IBM can process this through. It's also required when we're trying to get larger discounts than we have approval for. So we can only go to a certain level, and then we need to go to IBM to request larger discounts. And the special bid needs to be approved by the appropriate people. The higher your discounts are, the higher the level of approval needed by IBM. Note that all discounts are based on volume and timing, right? So end of quarter, end of year, typically the better time because people are more aggressive. When the special bid request is put in, it must be tied to a specific PA site or PAX site. This is your Passport Advantage site that you have with IBM. And the reason why I bring this up is some of you may say, I want to purchase more licensing and I want to put it under this new holding company that we just created. Typically, your PA site would be held maybe under a prior company, and you want those new licenses under a different company name. You would need to set up that new site for IBM first, and then have your sales representative request that special bid. That can often put a little snafu in your process if we don't plan for that ahead. When we request a special bid, we must request everything all together. So if you're going to ask for certain addendums, and we'll talk about what these are, or what you may be asking for in a little bit, if it must include the discount level, the volume of licenses that you are purchasing, and a justification on why you deserve this discount. So if you want to get yourself the best price, make sure you're helping your salesperson understand whether it's a competitive deal, what your growth patterns are, and additionally, you would need to include if you're going to do some prepaid support. Everything has to be defined in that special bid. If the salesperson puts the special bid through and you change your mind and say, wait, we want to change our quantity, believe it or not, it's got to go all the way through that special bid process again. So you may find it a little frustrating that sales reps are asking you to define everything, but that's why is they're trying to not have to go through. And candidly, IBM executives don't like approving the same thing multiple times. They want it done right the first time. So now that we understand a special bid, let's talk about understanding the IBM licensing definitions. The first type of user we're going to focus on is an authorized user. An authorized user is a unique person who is given access to a program. The number of processors does not matter. We don't care what hardware you have that on. The program may be installed in any number of computers. So, for example, it could be in a test, dev, or prod environment, or all three for that particular user. It's kind of like a named user. If you have Betty Lou needs to have a license. You cannot share these. So you can't say, I'm going to have one license called finance, and everybody in the finance department is going to share that. That is not legal, and you will be violating your contracts with IBM. It also cannot be reassigned temporarily. It can be permanently transferred. So if Betty Lou leaves the company, then you can assign that to Betty Lou's replacement. Now note, when you're on an authorized user model, you do need to purchase and have a license for any consultants, even if they're IBM consultants that will be in your system. So let's say you had 3 power users in your company and you're going to have a consultant come help you. You really need to have 4 licenses for those people. Now, when your consultant's completely done and moves on, then you can reallocate that license. But note, that's true whether you use Lodestar for services, another partner for services, or for IBM services direct. The second licensing model that IBM has is called a processor value unit, or PVU. Now, candidly, this just really confuses a lot of people. So fasten your seatbelts, we'll take you for a little bumpy ride. A processor value unit represents the server license and grants access to the basic server functions. This is the closest thing that IBM has to an enterprise license. And the PVU value assigned to each core processor depends on the hardware. So if you have HP hardware, it will have a certain rating, and maybe some systems are 70 PVUs per core, some are 100. It depends on the hardware that you're running this on. We typically recommend that you always have this in a virtual machine so that you can leverage the subcapacity agreement. What that subcapacity agreement says is, I'm going to buy a box and I'm going to have a lot more horsepower than I need initially so that I can grow. And I don't want to have to buy the PVU licensing for that entire box. Maybe I have an 8-core processor and I only need 4. I want to pay for licensing for IBM only for the 4. And you would do that through virtualization. Note that some licensing can be purchased as an authorized user or a PVU. An example would be maybe an enhanced consumer. Whereas there's also some licensing that require both, such as TM1. If it is PVU based, then like an enhanced consumer, then IBM does not care how many users you have. You could have 500 users on the system all at once, provided you're getting performance, you're fine. Once you start to see performance is kind of slowing down, you may want to add some more core processors to that. To get the PVU rating for your particular hardware, check out the IBM website. If you just go to Google and type in IBM PVU, you're going to get the page that shows that information. So let's evaluate the authorized user versus the PVU user. So an authorized user can be used in multiple environments without requiring a separate non-prod license. And that's really big to know, is that some of you out there have older licensing model and you look in your support renewal and you'll see that you have all authorized user, but you also see that you have a BI non-prod environment. Note that under the new licensing terms by IBM, you do not need that non-prod if all your licenses are authorized users, in particular in BI. Now in TM1 it's a little bit different. We'll talk about that when we get to TM1. A PVU model, for example, PVU on enhanced consumers, requires a non-production license for test and dev environments if those users are going to hop into that non-prod environment. If they're not going to get in that non-prod, they never do testing for you, then you shouldn't need it because your other power users are more than likely authorized users. Typically, you must have a lot of users to cost justify a PVU model. If you see your support renewal, you have 4,000 enhanced consumers that are authorized users, you may want to give us a call and we should evaluate whether it's more cost effective to move you into a PVU model. And we've done that with a number of clients. That the long-term effect was allowing for growth without incremental costs. So with IBM's licensing structure, back in the Cognos days, they required a separate non-prod license no matter what. In IBM world, that changed. So it's limited to development testing, quality assurance activities is when you use a non-prod. It's required if you have PVU licensing, for example, MBI, or if it's legally required. I have yet to run into a situation where that's the case, but that's what the language in the contract says. Note that TM1 now has a PVU server component, and therefore a non-prod environment would be required and is a separate license that you would need to do. Check your support renewal bills to see if you have non-prod licenses on that and see if you actually really need them. Now, a subcapacity agreement, I mentioned it earlier, and a subcapacity agreement allows clients to license eligible software products for less than the full capacity of the server. I bought a server with 8 core processors. I only need 4. To stay legal with your licensing structure with IBM, you would need to subcapacity that and control it with some kind of virtualization software. A subcapacity agreement is now incorporated into the PA agreement. Earlier, back about 5 years ago, you had to actually physically sign a separate agreement. All of you should be updated on your PA sites, and therefore it's automatically in play for you. But the great thing about leveraging the subcapacity agreement is that it can significantly reduce the licensing costs on your servers because you're only using half of it and you're only paying for that licensing. Now let's talk about the types of IBM sites. So there's 3 different sites we're going to talk about today, and the first one is called an FCT. And this was used mainly in the Cognos licensing. Some of you may still be on this. For example, if you have Cognos finance licenses, those licenses never made its way to IBM land really, and they are only available on an FCT site. If you have an FCT site and can move into a regular Passport Advantage, we want to try and get you there because there are some benefits that we'll talk about. This is typically for older licensing, is the FCT licensing. The next type of site we have is called a PAX, Passport Advantage Express. It was originally designed for small and medium enterprises, and it had no points program. You didn't need a significant purchase. And so a lot of people were able to set those up quite quickly. Note, when you have a Passport Advantage Express account, you're going to get a renewal bill for each purchase that you made. They don't co-terminate. If you bought 10 licenses in October and 30 in February and 20 in April, you're going to have 3 bills, each at those different anniversary dates under the Passport Advantage Express site. So renewals are per transaction. So the benefit there would be that you can spread your budget for your renewals throughout the year. But typically no addendums, no extra contracts, no special provisions are allowed in a Passport Advantage Express site. The next type of licensing site is called a Passport Advantage, a PA site. This was originally designed for larger IBM clients and was designed to provide volume licensing. Currently, it's not applicable to Cognos legacy licensing. We're starting to see some of the newer purchases are having some volume discounting. So basically what happens, the bigger your spend with IBM, you hit a level like a G or an H, and those levels will determine how big your discount is. This is kind of new to the Cognos world. It's not on all Cognos parts yet. Personally, my own belief, you're going to start to see this in the future. IBM hasn't said that. Again, those are my views. I just see a trend here. So if you can, you want to get all your site licenses onto your Passport Advantage site so that you can take advantage of those volume discounts on the applicable site numbers. It does not require a significant purchase anymore. Previously it did. They changed those rules, so you didn't have to do a major spend. Almost everybody would qualify for a Passport Advantage. The great thing is renewals are on an anniversary date. So if you're tired of getting 10 bills, we can co-terminate all of those and we can give you one single bill with a single anniversary date. Watch out when IBM starts to pull everything together. If you have some licenses that belong to a different division and you want them to get their own support renewal bill, you want to make sure that they have their own site number underneath the PA agreement. Kelly in our office has been awesome at doing that. So if you have support renewal questions or licensing questions for sites, please feel free to reach out to her. Most of you get emails from her already. Addendums are available for Passport Advantage transactions, provided the transaction is large enough. So if you're going to go buy $20,000 in licensing, IBM is probably not going to give you an addendum to the contract. Candidly, their legal department doesn't want to see it. So you have to have a pretty significant purchase in order to get an addendum approved. And I typically see right now those purchases need to be over about $150,000 in license revenue. So what is an addendum? Addendum is an additional contract term requested by the client to be added to their Passport Advantage terms that are unique for your organization. Like I said, IBM only allows addendums for major purchases, typically over 150, and they must be executed at the time of purchase. They can't even know they're to your benefit. Typically, they have to be processed with the purchase order. When we do that, we see some common addendums are used. There's sometimes a license exchange where we swap one license for a different. This is used when we trade parts in and there aren't any official trade-up parts. For example, if we wanted to move you from 4,000 enhanced consumer authorized user licenses to a PVU model, we would have to do an exchange document and it would be an addendum. When you get that, make sure you review it and make sure the correct part number's on there. When Lodestar handles that for clients, I personally double check all those addendums, but you want to make sure they're right because they're a lot harder to change a year later when you realize there was an error. They can also be used to move an older licensing model to a newer one. So sometimes they're used for moving from planning to enterprise planning. There is now a part number for that, so that one's not as common. We also see common addendums for not to exceed provisions. A not to exceed provision is when a client comes to us and says, I'm going to buy $150,000 worth of licenses of new software, and I want protection on future years support renewals, and I want to cap them at a certain percentage. Many of you are starting to ask for this. I get it. You want to make sure you are protecting yourself and that you're maintaining your budget. Note, if you work with a partner, make sure the addendum does not restrict you from purchasing future years support from your partner. Every now and then I've seen two versions of this contract, and there's a little disclaimer in there saying that you can only buy from IBM. You want to make sure that you can freely purchase from whoever you want to. Typically, it only will protect you for a few years. Make sure you review it before you sign it. This is the only way to ensure increase on your support. A verbal agreement from an IBMer or from a partner is not binding. I can't emphasize that enough. I've seen many times where people come to us and they say, well, last year when I made the purchase, IBM told me it would only be an increase of 10%. And we're like, yeah, well, that's not really the case now, is it? Because they didn't have it in writing at the time of contract, it doesn't matter what the IBMer said. Typically, in this situation, we've seen that IBMer probably moved on anyway. So protect yourself. Get the addendum signed at the time. So here's just a review. Some of you are familiar with these changes that were made a couple of years ago, but I like to review them for those of you that aren't. The enhanced consumer, IBM did a great job of changing this licensing structure so that it includes IBM Cognos mobility rights. Again, some of you older clients may have purchased mobile server and mobile rights. If so, give us a call. We've been able to use those to trade up some consumers and kind of give you a little credit for those mobility licenses when we move consumers to enhanced consumers. It includes business insight, it includes active reports, and it includes Go Office. So all of those are included in the enhanced consumer. They also, we talked about it earlier, changed the licensing rules for non-production licenses so that if you have an authorized user, you can use it in any number of environments without needing a non-prod license. Now, on the enterprise planning front, this is the enterprise planning, not TM1, but the predecessor, the enterprise planning that some of you may still be using. So with that, it can be utilized, the enterprise planning contributors. And what you're looking for here is the word enterprise. If you have planning contributors, they do not have these same rights. We need to trade those up to enterprise planning contributors. But what IBM did is they changed it and said, hey, we want people to start using TM1 if you own enterprise planning contributors and you purchase the applicable TM1 licenses, you can use these licenses on planning and or TM1, which is now called performance management. Like I said, look for the word enterprise. Remember, after you migrate to performance management TM1, you'll want to continue support on those enterprise planning contributors. They won't change the name, so keep making sure you pay support. Don't go, oh, we don't use planning anymore, and not pay those, because you'll just lose all your end user licensing. The transition from planning to performance management, now called or also known as TM1, will require the purchase of an analytics server and at least one performance modeler, used to be called TM1 modeler license. We also recommend that you purchase the non-prod. With TM1, the licensing requires analytics server and named user licenses. So non-prod is required if you're going to use multiple environments for TM1. Warning, IBM Cognos does not warn you when you have too many users accessing a studio or functionality that they're not licensed to utilize. So you could go set up 5,000 users in the system, but if you only have licensing for 500, you're going to be in big trouble. So you, as the consumer, must monitor your organization to ensure compliance. So you got to be your own police. You must purchase a trade-up for the consumer to have the legal rights to all the new functionality, such as mobility and all of that in Cognos 10. So enhanced consumer or higher has the new 10 functionality. And I mentioned this earlier, you must own a license for your consultants, even if they're IBM consultants. Any user that's in that system needs to have a license. So let's talk about understanding your licensing. So the legacy licensing, which includes BI admin, professional author, and all of those licenses, was a little bit confusing. Under the new guidelines released this fall, IBM has simplified this, but it's not really applicable to existing clients. I'm assuming most of you listening are existing clients, so I'm going to go over my grid real briefly. If you want a copy of this, send me an email, tell me who you are, and we'd be happy to send you a copy of this. This is an Excel, actually. And it's designed to help you understand what legal rights you have based on the license you own. So, for example, if we look at this grid right now, we can see the licensing rights for an advanced business author give you a little bit of everything. What it doesn't give you is full-fledged report studio, but it gives you Workspace Advanced and Cognos Office and all of that great functionality. In this grid, you'll see that I have some items highlighted in red, and that represents typical recommended legacy licenses. For the bang for the buck, that's the best value. You'll notice the enhanced consumers are highlighted there, and that's because if you compare a consumer to an enhanced consumer, what we'll notice is there's a lot more functionality. You get workspace, you get mobility, you get search, and you get active reports, which is where we have the data come down with the report so you can work on an airplane, for example. So this grid is designed to give you kind of a cheat sheet on what do you own and what functionality, so you can match those up with the licensing that you need and that you own. Now, if you get the spreadsheet copy of this, I also have another tab that better describes each of the items along the top. So if you're not familiar, for example, with what Cognos Insight is, it has a brief description and a hyperlink to the IBM website where you can see a demo of that software. So again, if you want a copy of this, send me an email at hcole@lodestarsolutions.com and we'd be happy to send this grid to you. And we do update it periodically. Now there's one item that was not on my grid that I wanted to describe because I get this question all the time. So people say, if I generate a report and I blast it out via email to people in a PDF, do those people need a license? They're not logging into the system, but I'm sending them data that was generated out of Cognos onto a PDF form. Now here's the rule of thumb. That license would be called a remote recipient, but you only need that license if that individual received personalized reports that were generated or in an automated fashion by Cognos. So it's typically emailed to them. When I say personalized, it would be like you're sending out a report to a salesperson and it only has his accounts on it. If that's more generic in nature and not personalized, where it has all the accounts of the company on it, then there is no licensing requirement. Typically, BI remote recipient is sold using a PVU licensing model. Every now and then I've seen it as an authorized, but typically you're blasting out to a lot of people and you're customizing their content. Note, it does not have active report content rights. Okay, I wanted to share with you a couple things that I actually stole out of another presentation that we give, and that's called our ROI Consultation. We offer this to all clients. It's an hour-long presentation where we talk to you about the licensing, everything that was on top on my grid, and what and how you can leverage it. I want to make sure you guys know that almost all your licensing for Cognos BI include IBM Cognos for Microsoft Office. This is a super powerful tool, and so many people don't know they have it, so I had to share. And what it is it's an Excel add-in or a PowerPoint add-in that it connects the Office suite to your Cognos environment, so you can actually have predefined reports of content that you built in Report Studio or in Workspace Advanced, and you can basically suck it right into your PowerPoint presentation for a board meeting. Finance people would love this. If you want to win the hearts of finance, show them what they own. And what this does is being able to take that dashboard that you created in Cognos BI, pull it into PowerPoint, modify the PowerPoint for your board presentation, go to your meeting, save it as a PowerPoint. Next month comes along, we got the same meeting, we want updated data, we just hit refresh and it will bring that content right back in with the new numbers. Note there is a separate install for this, so if you don't have it today, you'll have to go back, find those files, and install. It's not a major deal, though. We did a presentation on this in our most recent virtual user group, and then we put that video out on YouTube. So check out our Lodestar Solutions YouTube channel, and you'll find a presentation by Melissa in our organization. Here's the very cryptic web address for that, but please check that out. It's about a half-hour presentation. Dynamic query mode is something that was new in Cognos 10. Also want to just take a moment to make sure you know that you own this with Cognos BI. Basically, it's an enhanced query mode which leverages the kind of technology, the in-memory technology that we see in TM1 type solutions. And so it interfaces and leverages the 64-bit processing. If you want to use this, go get yourself the Dynamic Query Mode Cookbook. This is a little book that was written by IBM. It's free to you guys. Go get it. You can get it. If you can't find it, email me. I'd be happy to send it to you. But this will give you some great information. It's written by the product managers of that particular functionality. Now, after they created Dynamic Query Mode, they took it to the next level. And they said, whoa, let's create some dynamic cubes. This is an extension of IBM Cognos Dynamic Query. It again leverages the in-memory technology that IBM has. Note that you must have a data warehouse in a star schema or a snowflake schema to maximize the performance on the cubes. Again, there's another cookbook out there called the Dynamic Cubes Cookbook. So check it out. It allows for much faster query times. Here's a little slide that I borrowed from my dear beloved friends at IBM, but it helps you understand where cubes fit in and where dynamic query mode. Dynamic query mode can run on top of Essbase cubes. So if your finance department has Essbase, you could still grab that information using dynamic query mode. They're always adding more data sources, so check out their website for the latest on that. And then the dynamic cubes, you can see, is sitting on our large enterprise data warehouse. So let's talk about trading up your licensing. Some of you may have consumer licenses, and somebody may have said to you along the way, hey, time to upgrade those to enhanced consumers. You can then get mobility and active reports and a lot of new functionality. So let's talk about a trade up. Trade up is simply trading in the license of one license for a license of a higher value. So trading in, releasing the rights that I have on a consumer and now having the rights on enhanced consumer, for example. Note, when you do a trade up, it always includes 1 year of support maintenance. So if it's October and you just renewed your support bill this month, and then in November you come and you say, hey, Heather, I want to trade those up. Then we have to get creative. And so just the best time to do a support trade up is at support renewal time. So that way you get the best dollar value, you get the full year support trade up. And every now and then, depending on your licensing structure, sometimes it's more cost effective to actually buy new licenses and maybe slightly different form of a license at a discount than to do the trade up. So we typically evaluate that very thoroughly to make sure you get the best value. When you trade up, put a note on your calendar next year when you get your support renewal bill to make sure that license doesn't show up again. We've had a couple situations where a client was accidentally double charged. Kelly in our office that does the support renewals caught it, but you guys need to be diligent. If for some reason you don't use our services for your support renewal, you go directly to IBM. Keep an eye out for that. Put it on your calendar saying, hey, remind myself to double check that support renewal bill. Also, sometimes there are not trade-up part numbers that allow you to move to a higher license. So we can typically get creative on how we do that. And so let us know what you're trying to get to, and we'll figure out how to get you there. Here are some recommended trade-ups. We've talked about consumer to enhanced consumer, so you get workspace and active reports and mobility. If you're an older Series 7 PowerPlay client, I know you guys are still out there, consider moving those to enhanced consumer or PowerPlay Web. And then if you have a reporting admin as opposed to a BI administrator, you might want to trade that up to a BI administrator, which will give you Event Studio, which again, I think Event Studio is the most underutilized piece of Cognos, as it allows you to proactively inform people of changes in data. If you don't know about Event Studio, give us a shout. We'd be happy to teach you and talk about it in your ROI consultation. So IBM came out with a new BI licensing model for new clients. And I bring this up because some of you are jumping into this webinar and I've talked a lot about legacy clients, but you're a brand new client. So you would fit under the new Cognos clients under 10.2.1. There's a brand new, very simplified licensing model for the newbies. For those of us that have been around for a while, what's happening now is they're going to, over the long haul, try and get everybody on a simplified licensing model. The signs are there. But what you'll need to do is some of the licenses that you might own today that maybe you need a couple more of, like maybe you come to me and say, hey, Heather, I have Query Studio add-on and I need 10 more of those. Those are no longer on our price sheets from IBM. So we have to do what's called a special bid and request those. So some of the licenses are still available. Others are restricted and can only be purchased through special bid. So don't get nervous when we say, oh, we're going to do a special bid. Just know that the processing time, don't wait till the last minute at the end of the quarter to tell me that, because I need time to get all the approvals that we need. So here's how we can relate the existing licensing to the new licensing. Now, for some of you that have existing licensing, but you're looking to buy maybe licensing for a sister company, it's going to be a completely separate implementation, then maybe we'd like to look at the new licensing. But note that typically at this point, IBM doesn't recommend a mix of existing and new licensing because you run the risk of being out of compliance. And still, it's more cost effective to stay where you are if you're an existing client. But to get you an understanding, we have the BI admin, which is our power user. Under the new licensing model, that will be called a BI architect. For our power users, we have BI professional, and we have an advanced business author. Those all fall under our BI user. So they really kind of blended a bunch of licensing together and called it a BI user. And then we have our consumers, which again fall under the BI user unless it's a remote recipient. And I'm going to go back up one slide and make sure we point out again, the new BI licenses do not include Query Studio, Analysis Studio, Metric Studio, PowerPlay Studio, or Transformer. So those under this new licensing structure just don't even exist. So some of you may be scratching your heads and going, why would they exclude those licensing? Well, candidly, again, my personal opinion is that Query Studio and Analysis Studio, they want to move people off of that, and they want to move them into using Workspace for that. And Metric Studio is kind of being blended in a little bit more into TM1, or called Performance Management. So in PowerPlay Studio, that's what dynamic cubes will be allowing you to do some of that. So you're starting to see that they're adding new technology, and at some point they have to get rid of some of the older stuff. If that's going to impact how you grow, you might want to take into consideration that and start really looking at deploying Workspace and some of this other functionality in your organization. So mixing legacy and new BI licensing models into a single deployment, not recommended at this point. And just remember, we have to do a special bid on certain licensing. Okay, now for those of you that are TM1 people, you felt somewhat neglected, and so I want to talk to you about your changes in 10.2. There were significant changes. They like to change names, so again, they're throwing us all for a curveball and changing the name of many licenses, and this will show up even if you do nothing. Your support renewal bill will reflect these new names. So if you get a support renewal bill and you're like, I don't know, and that, be aware that that is probably truly your license. It just has a new name. So several pricing adjustments have been taken place. There's changes to and increases to licensing rights. We still can trade up from TM1 to Cognos Planning, and there's some permitted actions there. And they really simplified some of the licensing for those of you that have TM1 and BI. If you only have one or the other, talk to us. We can tell you how our clients have really benefited by having a blended environment. So let's talk about the renaming of TM1 licensing. So we have had the IBM Cognos Analytics Server for quite some time. That hasn't really changed. Note that that's a PVU licensing. It's required. If you want a non-prod in TM1, you'd also have to buy a non-prod license as a result of that server component. What's changed are the user roles. So the power user used to be called an Enterprise Planning TM1 Modeler. It's now called an IBM Cognos Performance Management Modeler. And that's an authorized user. The AU stands for Authorized User Licensing Model. You have to have at least one of those. That's your power user. That's the person building your cubes and your turbo integrator processes and so forth. They somewhat recently added a license that was called Advanced Planner. Most of our clients didn't have this because it didn't really exist at the time, but that is an IBM Cognos Enterprise User, and we'll show you what licensing comes with that in just a moment. And then they have the IBM Cognos Performance Management User. That is the new name for the TM1 contributor. So just remember, the Performance Manager user equals TM1 contributor. Now, they still have this license that's called TM1 Explorer. Again, only a small number of our clients have this. This is write access only to TM1. The name has stayed the same, but they're kind of de-emphasizing that. They're really trying to push people to the contributors, and we'll show you what they did to the pricing to help encourage that as well. note that some of the licensing rights is that BI server package with TM1. So you have rights to Cognos Workspace for TM1 sources with some of your BI licenses. And there's significant enhancements to Performance Management User, formerly TM1 Contributor. It now has Cognos and Excel analysis for Excel is included. TM1 scorecarding, which has a look and feel of metrics, right? And TM1 mobile contributor are now added to that Performance Management User. So when they changed the licensing rights, what they did is they really tried to simplify this for our users. So we have the Cognos Analytics Server that's required. And that can be compared to the Cognos Analytics Server for BI. If you own the Cognos Analytics Server, you don't need the one that's just for BI. Okay, so note that that should cover both, is my understanding, always subject to change. The Performance Management Modeler, you'll notice, some of you might notice that the price it was increased a little bit, but it gave you a lot more functionality. So it still has the Performance Modeler, the Operations Console, the Architect, all of that good stuff, but it also has Framework Manager available to you. And then we have the Cognos Business Intelligence Architect. That's on the BI side. That's your BI admin kind of like. And you can see their licensing there. That one did not change in price. The Cognos Enterprise User is basically a bundle of a performance management user and a BI user all in one. So you'll see this is a great value, because if you bought each one of these separately, then you're being charged like $3,800 versus the $3,400. Again, licensing and pricing always subject to change. A performance management user is your contributor, so it still has all the contributor rights. It has the workflow capabilities, and it has Cognos Insight. If you don't know what Cognos Insight is, go to our website, go check it out. Awesome technology. It's a desktop app that you can do some really cool things with. The Business Intelligence User, you'll notice, now has Cognos Insight too. They also have mobility, they have Event Studio rights, so great user license there. So this is all under the new model, as well as you can see what the TM1 rights are now. So now that we've talked about licensing, I recommend that all of you do an annual licensing checkup. So first step, give us an email, send us a message, call us, and ask us for the latest functionality spreadsheets, and those tell you what you own. Then review your current entitlements. If you don't have these, send us an email. We'd be happy to pull them for you and walk you through them and make sure you understand what you own. We offer all clients of Cognos a free ROI consultation. 1 hour, we're going to tell you, pull your entitlements, and we're going to tell you what functionality you own and how you might want to leverage it. Everybody that's done this has been like, this is the best hour I've spent. So if you're interested, email us, sign up. Space is limited, but if you email us in advance, we can usually get to you. Audit your current users in the system, find out who's using it, who's signed up, and make sure that you're in compliance and not exceeding your contractual limit. Remember, no warning signs. Once you educate yourself on the functionality, that might influence you on how you build anything new. So knowing that you're going to move to Workspace may change how you build in Report Studio a little bit. I recommend a meeting with your business users and executives to evaluate what changes are in the business and see how you can help them with the tools that you provide. Count the number of licenses that you need based on each role. And if you need assistance on this, either email us, call us, or if you'd like a quote on additional licenses, we can provide you a very competitive quote. So now for my Heather's helpful hints. Number 1, review your support bills. Please make sure that all your licenses on there. About at least once every 2 weeks, we get a call from some client where we pull their entitlements and they're missing licenses. And they were in a site that someone set up and that person left and they no longer were at the company, IBM sends out support renewals via email. There's no snail mail. So if John Doe was getting your support renewal bill and he left, you aren't going to get that bill. And they don't send email copies or snail mail copies, even if there's no response. So if someone is leaving and they were authorized as a primary in your Cognos support account, make sure before they leave that they change who that person is. It's a lot harder. It takes us a lot more paperwork to get it changed after that administrator left. So make sure as part of the exit process, if you lose any team members, they transfer those accounts. Evaluate your license mix. See if you need to upgrade license. And if you're not on a Passport Advantage site and you're at a Passport Advantage Express, consider moving to a Passport Advantage. We can help you with that. Note that when you make a major purchase, IBM has some great financing terms. So talk to your partner, talk to your sales rep. At Lodestar Solutions, all our analytic advisors are very well versed in financing and can guide you in that. Know your sales tax laws. This is a great one. Certain states like Florida and Georgia are what we call download only states. So if you bought your licensing and you told the supplier that you only want to receive updates by download and not get media, meaning a CD or DVD, then there's no sales tax in those states. Other states like Illinois have a unique 4-part test that allows you to avoid sales tax. So know your state sales tax laws. You could save a lot of money on that. If you have questions, we'd be happy to help you out on that as well. We don't know every state, but we know a lot of them. And we can help you, guide you to where you would look for that information. In the event that you are in a downloads-only state, there is a document that you will want to complete and have that on file with IBM. IBM only allows for downloads, but if you ever get sales tax audited, then you want to have that paperwork on file with IBM saying that you strictly told them that you would not accept media. That's just your protection. This slide I like. It's things you should favorite. And again, if you want us to email us to you, send us an email. But there's an area on the IBM support site that talks about supported products. And what we mean by that is when is 8.1 being decommissioned, that type of thing. You want to keep an eye on that if you haven't been upgrading lately. And the other one that I like is the supported environments for your version of Cognos. So what version of SQL do we support? What version of operating systems? What version of Excel? All of that is out there. It is updated regularly. So check that out. Favorite it in your links. Always go to our lodestarsolutions.com events page, and that will give you everything cool and fun that we're doing. And also our blog. We're also starting to do more video blogging, and you should check out our YouTube channel. If you're not familiar with Analytics Zone, go out there. This is an IBM site that has all sorts of great Cognos Insight models, webinars, and educational information. So big fan of analyticszone.com. So that concludes our information for today. Hopefully you found it very beneficial. And if you need to get a hold of me, again, this is Heather Cole. I can be reached at hcole@lodestarsolutions.com. My phone number, 813-415-2910. Please check out our Psychology of Requirements Gathering for Change Agent workshop. It's a blast. The reviews have been awesome. People love it because we laugh a lot and have a lot of fun. If you need support renewals, Kelly Ray is the person to contact. If you need any kind of services or training, contact our services administrator, Kathy Myers. And we thank you guys for your time today. We look forward to seeing you at more events, and make it a great day.